All right, everybody, so welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. So today we're going to be talking about full-blown fall, so patterns that you can use during the fall to catch a lot more fish. Now, like I've said before, fall is one of those extremely fun times in my opinion, because there's days you go out and you just load the boat up with fish. I mean, like my bald fall video last year, I mean, it's just, we show up to the lake, we're there maybe 2 hours, we catch like 60 to 70 fish, and I mean, this pattern goes on for like 2 weeks. It's just so much fun, and then it kind of dies off, and then it picks up, then it kind of dies off. You got fish living on the main lake, you got fish living or transitioning into the creeks, you've got fish that's been in the creeks all year long, and then you're going to have that migration back out to the main lake. So, you know, there's just a lot of stuff going on and a bunch of different ways to catch them, and it can be a confusing time, and sometimes it's really aggravating. But, you know, either way, before we jump into everything, I want to say we're working with Thunderhawk Lures now, so if you're interested in getting Thunderhawk's products, go to thunderhawklures.com. At checkout, you see Posey20, you'll get 20% off, and it helps me out a whole lot. We're also working with Salty Captain, so go to their website, check them out. They've got all different kinds of cleaning stuff for your vehicles, boats, whatever you got. Use Colton15 at checkout, and you'll save 15%, and it helps me out a lot also. So stay tuned, guys. It's something you don't want to miss. All right, guys, so we're gonna kind of start out talking about like the main lake. So let's say you're staying out on the main lake, and then we're gonna talk about working our way back into the creeks and pockets and stuff, okay? So the main lake, what is typically the time during fall when I'm gonna stick to the main lake? And it's typically gonna be if I get on a really good pattern, maybe it's on points that are right at the mouths of creeks and stuff, where these fish are kind of chasing the really small bait fish close to the bank, or they're kind of out in the middle, you know, kind of roaming in like a small area. I typically don't focus on main lake points if it's a big expansive area with nothing around but that point, because a lot of times when there's no wind and stuff, it just kind of how do I say it, you really have to chase them. And you know, if you got forward facing sonar and you know you like doing that kind of stuff, that may be for you. Me personally, I don't. It kills my back sitting there just looking straight down, so you know I don't do it a whole lot. Now if I don't have any other way to catch them, then I do, but or no other patterns going on. But either way, you know, the mouths of the creeks is going to be a great area to find. You know, typically they'll huddle up real close together in schools, and you'll be able to catch multiple fish out of the schools. Finding the right size can be the key, because you know a lot of times these fish, you'll have groups of just a bunch of small ones roaming, and then kind of those in between places where you'll catch a big one, like you see in my like you've seen in my videos here recently. It's like we'll catch a bunch of small fish and then we'll bump into a good one. We'll catch a bunch of small fish and then we'll bump into a good one. So you know, it's kind of just this repetitive, grindy process. But you know, if you're just out on the lake to catch a lot of fish, it's a great time to do that, especially with moving baits. So you know, with like my best baits for October video, you know, that 1/4 ounce spinnerbait is really going to be a big key. It's really going to be a big key this time of year. It's small, it's compact, and it looks like, you know, just a small group of bait fish going through the water. And that's the thing with these big schools around and stuff now. These fish are coming up through these schools of bait fish, and then the bait fish will kind of separate and then come back together. So, you know, it kind of looks like maybe one that's getting separated or something like that. But either way, that's my opinion on it anyways. But, you know, that 1/4 ounce spinnerbait is going to be a huge key. Stick to your natural colors. But let's talk about going into the pockets, okay? So let's talk about pockets like you see, like just right off your main lake, and you know, you see that pocket go back up in there, and you know, you can see the end of the pocket from the main lake, okay? Excuse me. So those types of areas, I'm typically going to start at the mouth and work my way back, and I do that every single time, and I'm covering water quickly, simply because at any point in time those fish can move back and forth. They'll migrate back and forth because they're typically chasing bait this time of year. You get what I'm saying? So you know, you kind of have to play it all by ear. All right, so, you know, just kind of expanding on the pockets. When am I typically going to go all the way to the back of the pockets? Typically, if there's a ton of wind pushing into that pocket, right? So if there's a bunch of wind pushing up in that pocket, it usually pushes those bait fish to the backs, okay? And when they go to the backs, the bass go to the backs, and they will get dirt shallow. I mean, you can almost see their fins coming up out of the water, so they get super easy to catch, especially in that shallow water. And a lot of times with these winds and stuff, those backs of those pockets will muddy up, so, you know, that water, it's just a little bit different, and the fish just seem to become a lot easier to catch. Now, kind of moving off of the creek, or off of the pockets, besides run-ins, I forgot to mention that run-ins. You know, you get a lot of rain, and you got water coming in, you obviously want to go, typically you're going to go straight back to the run-in because there's typically going to be fish towards the back. And here's the thing, don't get super close to the run-in. You want to get about 100 to 120 feet from the, you know, where the water's coming into the main lake or the pocket itself, and cast straight towards the middle and bring that bait out. Those fish will sit right in the middle of that channel and suspend it and just look that way, waiting for stuff to come out of that run-in. So, you know, it's a super great time to catch fish, and they become real predictable this time of year. And they can become very, very finicky because you got to think these fish are seeing baits all the way from spring until fall. I mean, they're just seeing everything, all these new baits, all these different techniques and stuff because there's so many people out on the water. Now, let's talk about the creeks, because this is the fun part, and this is where you can catch a lot of fish and a lot of big fish. I'm typically gonna, most of the time, 99% of the time, this time of year, I'm gonna start at the mouth of a creek and start working my way back, covering water quickly, very quickly. You can cover a huge creek, an entire creek, in 30 to 45 minutes, as long as you do it efficiently with the right bait and you're casting at the right stuff. Now, here's the thing, you're gonna catch a lot of fish, and you're gonna catch those big fish in between like I was talking about earlier, okay? So, you know, you really gotta pay attention to what's going on, because if you start catching these fish in the half parts of the creek, right? So if you're catching them halfway into the creek, then you can typically run that pattern throughout the entire lake. Now, in the middle of the day, it may die off or something, then you kind of have to reset yourself. Start at the beginning of the creek and start working yourself back. Different baits, different techniques, stuff like that. You'll run into another pattern. You know, the one pattern that we had this morning, they were in the middle parts of the creeks. We were catching fish in the middle parts of the creeks. Then it kind of died off, but we were catching them on swim baits and stuff like that. But like I said, it kind of died off. The day before, I was catching them on isolated pieces of grass. So it would just be like a straight bank of rock, and then there'd be a little section of grass. Those fish would be right on the outside of that grass. And I could run that pattern all over the lake. Then it dies off, okay? So when that stuff dies off, you kind of have to swap. So like today, we were catching fish in the middle of the creeks, and then that pattern dies off, we go to pinch points. And that's one thing that I really, really wanted to talk about and hone in. Whenever you're fishing during the spring, during the fall, anytime there's a migration of fish from, you know, the main lake to creeks, or from creeks to the main lake, those pinch points, and what I'm talking about is like those bridges that go back into the creeks, little areas that narrow down that they have to go through to get somewhere. Those are pinch points. And fish will set up like crazy on those pinch points. You can catch multiple fish, you can catch big fish, and the coolest thing about it is, different times of day, you will have different groups of fish rotating in and there, or in and out of there all day long. So, you know, you can run that area, catch fish, go somewhere else, do something else, come back in a couple hours, and you know, there's probably 90% of the time there's going to be a new group of fish on it. So, you know, it's a great time to be on the water. It's a great time to catch a bunch of fish, and it's a great time to learn a lot, because you're going to have those rough days where maybe it's just dead slick calm and the fish go deep in the creeks and stuff like that. They're just real finicky and not wanting to bite anything. So it's a great time to practice just about everything and to cover water. I can't express this enough. Cover tons of water, and I guarantee you'll catch more fish. Guys, I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you for tuning in. You know, if you're new here, make sure to like, subscribe, especially if the video helps you. I'm always putting out all different kinds of stuff about bass fishing. If you have any questions about the fall transition or anything about bass fishing, drop a comment down below. If you got anything to add to what I'm saying, drop a comment down below. That's what this community is all about, is about about learning about bass fishing, making us more efficient anglers and stuff. Also, if you want to get new merch, we got Colton Posey Fishing merch now, so just go to my Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, any of that stuff. Check out the shirt, see which one you want. Shoot me a message, $25 shipped to your door. Super cheap, super affordable. I don't make much money off of them, but you know, it's something to get out there with. And guys, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.